Welcome back everyone to my tutorial series. So after my last tutorial about Pro Tools session prep, I got a few requests to do a tutorial video on how to deliver those recorded and mixed files to the dub stage. Apparently it's very unclear who delivers the files and in what format. So here's how you do it on commercial productions that have a professional dub stage booked. Now, for those who don't know this, the dub mix is one of the last processes to happen in movie making. It's where the sound mix of the entire movie happens. So a dub stage is usually equipped like a mixing studio with a console and everything, but it's combined with a Dolby Surround or even an Atmos movie theater. So it's essentially like mixing the movie sound inside the theater to get the most realistic performance the same way audiences will experience it. During the dub mix, the filmmakers and sound people painstakingly go through every single sound that is in the movie. Every sound effect, every line of dialogue, every piece of music, every Foley creation, and they balance those elements in volume and within the surround field. This process alone takes weeks because you have to essentially watch the whole movie in its entirety an incredible amount of times to make sure that the final sound print reflects the filmmaker's exact intentions. Now to the actual file delivery. As with almost any recording and mixing facility in the world, dub stages are also equipped with AVID software, namely Pro Tools, which means that is the format in which you want to deliver the final score mixes. Sometimes these sessions are prepared by the score mixer, sometimes they're prepared by the music editor if there is one, but very often they're also just prepared by the composer of the project. And this time around, not every cue gets its own session. You usually deliver either one session per reel, or if there are no reels, then just one master session with everything in it. Since we recorded and mixed the score in surround, we need to deliver the sessions in surround as well. You can create a new surround session from scratch, which essentially works the same way as the session prep in the previous video, except now instead of selecting stereo, you select the surround option. But more commonly, you will simply take the sessions you receive from the mixing engineer. The score mixer will already have printed some surround stems for the dub mix, either just in raw audio files or in Pro Tools sessions. If you have a great score mixer, like I do, shout out to Schmidt, they will go above and beyond and even import them into a real session already, so you don't have to do the extra work. If you get the prints in separate Pro Tools sessions, like one session for each cue, like you initially delivered, you can simply open the first one of each reel and then import the session data from the other sessions of that same reel. The standard stem splits next to a stereo reference and a full surround mix reference are woodwinds, brass, strings, percussion, a stem called PBH, which is piano, bells, and harp, and a vocals stem. If you recorded the whole orchestra together instead of striping, I'll explain that in a separate video, but if you recorded everyone together, of course you can only do an orchestra stem, you can't deliver everything in a separate stem. Plus anything that is sampled, of course. These splits aren't set in stone though. Every project is different and can require extra splits like, for example, ethnic instruments or specific soloists. So really do what is best for the type of score that you're writing. This is obviously very much tailored to standard orchestral scoring. There are pros and cons to delivering more splits instead of fewer splits. The more splits you have, the more flexibility you are giving everyone at the dub stage. But you're also inviting people to start messing with your music, of course. Personally, I prefer that approach of giving more splits. It just makes for cleaner edits if cues need to be adjusted after the fact. And if something just doesn't work, say a woodwind all of a sudden interferes with an added line of dialogue that I didn't have when I was writing the score, then they can just mute that woodwind solo instead of turning the volume of the entire cue down, or worse, even cut the whole cue altogether from the movie. Now, often I will have gotten some new picture edit adjustments somewhere in between orchestration, recording, and mixing. So I couldn't make those conforms in MIDI, of course, because it's too late at that point. You could adjust things at the session, but we usually have very limited session time, so I don't waste any session time with conforms. You could do it at the hotel room overnight, but usually I don't bother. I'm more concerned with prepping, my conducting and everything. So that means that since I couldn't conform the cues before, I now have to make audio edits. So before I deliver the final sessions to the dub mix, I need to check that everything still lines up and make those edits that need to be made. Often those will be in Reel 1 because logos have been added in the front. Often those will be in the last reel because end credits are added to the movie that you don't necessarily have while you're writing the score. And so now you have to edit a score medley to fit the length of the end credits. But sometimes I also have entire cues that I just edit from scratch, or entire cues that I knew I could do in edits, so I didn't even bother taking them to the sessions, and now I'm just editing them in. If there's a music editor on the project, that's usually their responsibility, this whole editing process and this whole delivery process. But music editors are a bit of a luxury, so if you are even just on a medium-sized production that may have live recording, that doesn't mean that that production has a music editor on it. So as you can see, once I have my reels as Pro Tools sessions, I can then do the same thing as before in the previous video, zip up the files, and then transfer them via WeTransfer, Dropbox, or Aspera, or whatever they prefer. Often dub stages will have their own internal server that they want you to transfer to, so just do that. And then at the dub, they essentially have identical reel sessions that you just created. They have that too, with the sound effects and with the dialogue and everything. So now they can just import all your session data into their master session. This is how everyone delivers. This is also how the sound effects guys and Foley guys and dialogue people and anyone who delivers sound delivers like this, so that the people at the dub just import everything into one gigantic master session, and then they can essentially proceed, hopefully with everything lining up properly, and then they can spend weeks balancing those hundreds of tracks and thousands of elements that they got from everyone.